Hello, and welcome to our weekly get-together. In this week's Torah portion, Beshallach, after God performs miracles and frees the Israelites from Egyptian bondage, the Israelites complain to Moses that Pharaoh is pursuing them and that the sea is in front of them. So God splits the sea and allows them to cross to the other bank. Then they go to Marah and complain that the water is bitter. So Moses throws a tree in the water and it becomes sweet. Then they complain that they want meat and bread. So God provides quail and manna. Then they complain because there's no water. So God commands Moses to strike a stone to get water. Why are the Israelites complaining all the time? Is it not clear that God is providing everything they need time after time? Still, are their complaints not legitimate? So why are they being implicitly criticized for them? Are we supposed to expect continuous miracles to get them out of trouble? Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, once told the visitor, "We Jews don't believe in miracles. We rely on them." Let's take a look at the specific language of the complaints in this week's portion. In Exodus 14, it says, quote, "Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing after them. They were very frightened, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, 'Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us to die in the wilderness? What is this that you have done to us to take us out of Egypt? Isn't this the thing about which we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, Leave us alone, and we will serve the Egyptians, because we would rather serve the Egyptians than die in the desert?' The Midrash even says, if you can believe it, that the Israelites also complained about the fact that they had to walk in mud after the sea split open. Then in Exodus 15 it says, Moses led Israel away from the Red Sea, and they went out into the desert of Shur. They walked for 3 days in the desert, but did not find water. They came to Marah, but they could not drink the waters because they were bitter. Therefore it was named Marah, meaning bitter. The people complained against Moses, saying, 'What shall we drink?' So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord instructed him to cast a piece of wood into the water, and the water became sweet." In Exodus 16, it says, quote, "The entire community of the children of Israel complained against Moses and against Aaron in the desert. The children of Israel said to them, 'If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, where we sat by flesh pots, when we ate bread to our fill. For you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire congregation to death.' So the Lord said to Moses, 'Behold, I'm going to rain down for you bread from heaven, and the people shall go out and gather what is needed for the day.' The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, 'I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. In the afternoon you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be sated with bread.' It came to pass in the evening that the quails went up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. The layer of dew went up, and behold, on the surface of the desert, a fine bare substance as fine as frost on the ground. When the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, 'It is manna,' because they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, 'It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat.'" In Exodus 17, it says, quote, "The entire community of the children of Israel encamped in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. So the people quarreled with Moses, and they said, 'Give us water, that we may drink.' Moses said to them, 'Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?' The people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses, and they said, 'Why have you brought us up from Egypt to make me and my children and my livestock die of thirst?' Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, 'What shall I do for these people? Just a little longer, and they will stone me.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'Strike the rock in Horeb, and the water will come out of it, and the people will drink." Unquote. Okay, why are the Israelites complaining constantly? 5 reasons can be put forward. The first reason is that people love to complain, and Jews are probably in the forefront of that phenomenon. However, in this case, it is not as if 1 or 2 Israelites complained once. The Torah says that the entire congregation rose up against Moses 4 times. And it's more than just complaints. There is sarcasm thrown in. The Israelites say, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us to die in the desert?" There is deep suspicion of Moses' motivations. The Israelites say, "For you have brought us out into the desert to starve this entire congregation to death." And also, "Why have you brought us up from Egypt to make me and my children and my livestock die of thirst?" The Israelites seem to prefer the devil they know, slavery, to the devil they don't know, the uncertainty of the desert. They say, "Leave us alone and we will serve the Egyptians, because we would rather serve the Egyptians than die in the desert." There is a Jewish proverb that says, "If God lived on earth, all his windows would be broken." In the musical Fiddler on the Roof, Tevye complains to God non-stop. Some even argue that complaining is good and is the real source of Jewish greatness. Being unhappy with the status quo is the condition of progress in any field. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said, "All that is creative stems from a seed of endless discontent." In the vernacular, being fat, dumb, and happy will not lead to any advances. The second reason for complaining is that it's a character flaw of this particular generation. The Kotzker Rebbe, the 19th century Hasidic sage, notes that they were never happy. The third reason for complaining is that the Israelites still had a slave mentality. Slaves have everything provided for them. They may lack freedom, but they also have few worries. They want to avoid problems they never had before. For example, God decides not to take the Israelites through the land of the Philistines because, the Torah says, they might get scared by war and return to Egypt. Rather, he takes them by the Sea of Reeds, a circuitous route. Nevertheless, this is exactly what happens anyway. The Israelites do face the Egyptian army at the Sea of Reeds and do ask to return to Egypt. And they also have to face Amalek in battle also. So, why bother avoiding the shortcut through the land of the Philistines in the first place? Also, why should the Israelites fear war? After all, they are 600,000 strong, and they are armed. And they know that they will have to fight their way into the promised land. And why the complaining after the splitting of the sea? Didn't God just perform a whole bunch of miracles for them? All 3 questions have one answer. God is breaking their slave mentality. Rabbi Yoel ben Nun says that God takes the Israelites by the Sea of Reeds to put them in military conflict with Egypt, so they won't look to Egypt for assistance in the future. The Israelites feared war because it is inconceivable to slaves to rise up against their masters. Rabbi Menachem Leibtag says that the whole point of Parshat Beshallach is to liberate the Israelites from the slave mentality. The fourth reason is that the first manifestation of newfound freedom is frequently the freedom to complain about the administration, to kvetch. The fifth reason is that complaining is frequently no more than a way of expressing fear. In our portion, the Torah says, quote, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Why do you cry out to me? Speak to the children of Israel and tell them to move on.'" What does this quote mean? Moses does not cry out to God in the text. If Moses was crying out to God off text, what was he asking for? Not for instructions, because God tells him in so many words to stop crying and get going. Sforno, the 16th century Italian commentator, says that Moses was afraid he would not be able to get the Israelites to do their parts and was asking God how to handle them. So God is rebuking Moses for not seeing that the children of Israel are merely venting their fears and that Moses is hearing the voice of fear as opposed to the voice of rebellion. God is rebuking Moses for not being able to tell the difference between the two. God says, so to speak, I can split the sea, but you, Moses, have to bring them across, and in order to do that, you must know your people. This is not something that I will do for you. Moses suspected them of not wishing to do God's will, instead of realizing that it was only the fear talking. Remember, Moses never knew slavery. He has yet to become part of the people he is required to lead. God tells him, in order for this people to do what I tell them, you have to know their hearts. This was Moses' challenge and the criterion by which he was judged. So, complaining is not all bad and can be a sign of health in a society. Let us not judge the Israelites too harshly on that account. Shabbat Shalom.